Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Right now, before you scroll away, imagine that the most ordinary coin you have ever ignored, a simple Lincoln penny dated 1981 with a small D mint mark, could secretly represent one of the most astonishing hidden fortunes in American history, because this story is about how an everyday cent, struck during a year most people barely remember, has become surrounded by legends, errors, mysteries, and collector obsession so intense that its face value narrative has exploded into a jaw-dropping $264 million valuation in the most extreme and talked about scenarios ever discussed in numismatic circles. And as this journey unfolds, it pulls you into a world where history, chance, human error, and obsessive discovery collide in ways that feel almost unreal, because the Lincoln penny has always been more than pocket change. It is a symbol of America itself, carrying the portrait of Abraham Lincoln since 1909, surviving wars, economic shifts, and metal shortages, and by 1981 the United States. Mint was already operating under intense pressure as copper prices fluctuated, production volumes soared, and the transition years between traditional bronze and newer compositions created a perfect storm for mistakes, anomalies, and undocumented oddities. And within this storm, the 1981 D Lincoln penny quietly entered circulation, mostly unnoticed, sliding into cash registers, coin jars, and childhood collections, while a few rare pieces began developing stories so strange that collectors, decades later, would question whether they should even exist at all, because 1981 was not just another year. It was a moment when die preparation techniques were changing, mint equipment was aging, and quality control faced challenges that allowed subtle but dramatic errors to escape, including off-metal strikes, double dies, misaligned dies, planchet anomalies, and experimental alloy possibilities that were never meant to leave the mint. And these are the exact kinds of errors that fuel million-dollar dreams, because when a coin combines extreme rarity, historical timing, visual shock, and unanswered questions, its value is no longer controlled by catalogs alone. It is driven by mythology, demand, and the belief that the impossible might be sitting in plain sight, and the 1981 D penny sits right at the center of that belief, because while standard examples are common, the rumored ultra-rare variants are said to show dramatic doubling in Lincoln's profile, ghost-like extra lettering in Liberty, distorted dates where the numerals appear to melt or shift, and mint marks that seem repunched, tilted, or doubled in ways inconsistent with official records. And then there are the most controversial stories of all, whispers of 1981 D pennies struck on experimental copper alloys heavier than normal, producing weights that do not match any known standard, triggering speculation that test planchets or leftover materials from prior years were accidentally fed into presses, creating coins that technically should never have existed. And when collectors began weighing, magnifying, and comparing these coins under microscopes, the mystery deepened rather than resolved, because some pieces simply refused to conform to known categories. And in the world of high-end collecting, uncertainty does not always reduce value, it can multiply it, because the fewer explanations that exist, the more collectors are willing to pay for the chance to own the unanswered question itself. And this is where the astonishing $264 million narrative begins to take shape, not as a single confirmed auction sale, but as a symbolic figure representing what the rarest possible 1981 D Lincoln penny could command if it combined multiple extreme errors in one flawless state of preservation, such as a perfect mint state condition paired with a dramatic double die obverse, an off-metal strike, and a documented provenance tracing its discovery back to original circulation. Because at that level, the coin becomes a once-in-a-lifetime artifact rather than a collectible, comparable to famous error coins like the 1943 copper cent or the 1955 double die penny, which themselves transformed the hobby by proving that cents could be worth more than gold. And the psychology behind this cannot be ignored, because collectors are not only buying metal, they are buying stories, proof of human fallibility, and tangible evidence that even the most controlled systems can produce miracles by accident. And the Lincoln penny is the perfect canvas for this obsession, because billions were struck, making the hunt accessible to everyone, while the rarest survivors become symbols of triumph for those who find them. And the 1981 D penny represents a late chapter in the classic era of copper cents, just before the major shift to zinc composition in 1982, giving it a special transitional aura. And transitional years are famous for producing the most valuable mistakes, because mints test, adjust, and improvise, and when improvisation meets mass production, anomalies are inevitable. And as stories spread online, through coin shows and across generations of collectors, the legend of the $264 million 1981 penny grows stronger, fueled by unverified finds, grainy photographs, and whispered claims of private sales that never reach public auction records. And while skeptics demand documentation, believers counter with the idea that the most valuable coins are often locked away in private vaults, never offered publicly, their values existing in theory, negotiation, and potential rather than headlines. And this tension between skepticism and belief keeps the story alive, because every time someone checks their change and finds a 1981 penny, the question sparks again: could this be the one? Could this be the coin that rewrites value charts and shocks the world? And this sense of possibility is what transforms a simple cent into a cultural phenomenon, because it invites everyone into the hunt, regardless of wealth or background, turning spare change into a lottery ticket powered by history. And even beyond errors, condition alone can dramatically affect worth, because a perfectly preserved 1981 penny with blazing original luster, sharp details, and zero where can already command attention. But when combined with even a minor anomaly, it leaps into an entirely different category. And collectors know that grading services act as gatekeepers in this world, because once a coin is authenticated and encapsulated, its story becomes official, and rumors can suddenly turn into recorded fact, which is why the idea of a $264 million valuation remains so compelling, because it represents the absolute ceiling of what could happen if the right coin, with the right errors, discovered at the right time, meets the right buyer. And history has shown repeatedly that today's skepticism can become tomorrow's headline, because many legendary coins were once dismissed as myths until they were proven real. And this is why the Lincoln penny, humble and overlooked, continues to dominate conversations decades after its release, because it reminds us that value is not always obvious at first glance, and that history often hides its treasures in the most unassuming places, waiting for curiosity to unlock them. And as long as there are jars of coins, inherited collections, and late-night searches through pocket change, the legend of the 1981 Lincoln penny will continue to grow, evolving with each new claim, discovery, and debate. And that is why this story refuses to fade, because it is not just about money. It is about the thrill of discovery, the romance of error, and the idea that something extraordinary can exist where no one thought to look. And if this story has sparked your curiosity, fueled your imagination, or made you glance twice at the pennies you once ignored, then show your support by liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and staying tuned for more unbelievable stories hiding in plain sight within America's coins. Next, 2003 Lincoln penny. What if the smallest coin in your pocket carried a story so explosive that it rewrote modern numismatic history? A copper-plated whisper from 2003 that quietly crossed mint floors before erupting into legend. Because the Lincoln penny 2003 USA issue is rumored by collectors to be a once-in-a-generation anomaly whose face value narrative has ballooned into a staggering $265 million worth of big money in history. And the reason this tale grips attention is not hype alone but a chain of circumstances, technical curiosities, and collector psychology that collide at exactly the right moment to ignite a viral storm. The year 2003 was already charged with transition energy in American coinage as the Lincoln cent, bearing Abraham Lincoln's enduring profile, continued its zinc core with copper plating while mint operations faced immense production pressure, equipment calibration cycles, and material tolerances that left little room for error yet never eliminated the possibility of it. And the Denver Mint, identified by the small d beneath the date, was running at a pace that turned millions of cents into everyday change, most destined for obscurity, except for a microscopic fraction that emerged with traits so unusual that seasoned eyes stopped, stared, and began asking dangerous questions. Stories began circulating about select 2003 pennies displaying off-metal characteristics, striking anomalies, alignment oddities, and surface textures inconsistent with standard zinc planchets, leading to speculation about experimental blanks, transitional remnants, or unintended die interactions that slipped past quality control. And while official documentation remains sparse, the numismatic community thrives on pattern recognition and probability, not just paperwork. As examples surfaced showing unusual weight deviations, edge seams that suggested bonding irregularities, and die markers that repeated across a tiny population, the idea formed that a limited batch might exist that fundamentally challenged assumptions about what a modern penny could be, and once that idea took hold, market psychology did the rest. Collectors know that value is born where rarity meets demand and the narrative here was irresistible. A modern Lincoln cent, accessible in theory to anyone, yet potentially harboring a multimillion-dollar secret if the right traits aligned. Auction whispers turned into forum threads. Forum threads became videos, and videos fed algorithms that amplified the mystique, transforming a humble coin into a cultural artifact. The $265 million figure did not appear overnight. It grew from speculative aggregations, private sale rumors, conditional premiums, and the hypothetical valuation of a complete set of authenticated anomalies tied to the 2003 D run, each layer compounding the legend and pushing the story into viral territory. Skeptics argued that modern cents cannot command such heights, pointing to mintages in the billions, but proponents countered with precedent, reminding audiences that rarity is not solely a function of mintage but of survivorship, discovery, and verifiable uniqueness, especially when errors are involved that create effectively new varieties. The conversation expanded to include strike-throughs with retained debris that left ghostly impressions, double die effects that appeared in localized areas rather than full devices, and plating blisters that suggested chemical anomalies during the copper wash process, all of which, when found together or in rare combinations, can create coins that defy easy classification. Add to that the allure of pristine condition, because modern errors preserved in near-perfect states are exponentially rarer than worn classics, and you have a recipe for valuations that escalate beyond conservative expectations. As collectors examined die states and micromarkers, some noted repeating scratches and polishing lines that implied a short-lived die pair, reinforcing the notion of a small, discrete population, and that observation mattered because it allowed for the possibility of a census, a critical step in legitimizing extraordinary claims. The market responded with escalating offers for certified examples, grading services were inundated with submissions, and the act of authentication itself became part of the story, as each slabbed coin added data points that either strengthened or weakened the thesis. The Lincoln cent's cultural resonance amplified the effect. Lincoln is not just a design but a symbol, and symbols carry emotional weight that translates into collector passion, which in turn translates into price elasticity. As mainstream media brushed against the topic, framing it as a modern treasure hunt hiding in plain sight, public participation surged, with people checking jars, drawers, and rolls, a collective action that paradoxically increased scarcity of the true anomalies by flushing out counterfeits and lookalikes. The conversation matured, shifting from sensational headlines to nuanced discussions about metallurgical testing, XRF readings, and the difference between plating anomalies and true off-metal strikes, because credibility demands rigor, and rigor, when applied, did not extinguish the legend but refined it. Those who dismissed the $265 million figure as hyperbole missed the structural argument being made, that the aggregate value of the finest known examples, combined with the cultural premium and the probability-adjusted expectation of future discoveries, could justify a number that sounds impossible until you map the components. In that framework, the Lincoln Penny 2003D became a case study in how modern coinage can still surprise us, how systems designed for uniformity can produce singular outcomes, and how information velocity in the digital age can transform a niche find into a global phenomenon. The penny's face value remained 1 cent, a poetic contrast that fueled headlines and kept audiences engaged, because the idea that something so small could be worth so much taps into a universal hope that fortune can hide anywhere. As time passed, the narrative stabilized around a core set of recognized traits, and while debate continues, the coin's place in popular numismatic lore is secure, serving as a reminder that history is not only ancient but ongoing, minted daily, waiting for someone curious enough to look closely. Whether the final accounting ever confirms the full $265 million story is almost secondary to the impact already made, because the Lincoln Penny 2003D has inspired a generation to learn about minting, errors, grading, and market dynamics, turning casual observers into informed participants. If you are holding one, the lesson is not to assume value but to investigate thoughtfully, consult experts, and understand the difference between myth and measurable rarity, because that process is where real discovery lies. And if this story sparked your curiosity, challenged your assumptions, or made you want to check your change with new eyes, then like this story, subscribe for more deep dives into hidden history, and stay tuned for the next coin that proves legends can still be minted. Next, 1996, D. Lincoln Penny. Today we are diving into a jaw-dropping mystery that has stunned collectors, dreamers, and everyday pocket change hunters alike. because the humble 1996 D Lincoln penny has become the center of one of the most astonishing valuation legends in modern numismatic history, with a rumored and widely discussed potential worth of up to $266 million due to a rare convergence of errors, minting mistakes, transitional anomalies, and historical circumstances that transformed an ordinary copper-plated zinc cent into a coin that symbolizes the ultimate check-your-change fantasy. And as you settle in, imagine the thrill of discovering that a coin once dismissed as spare change could carry the weight of a mansion, a private island, or generational wealth. Because the 1996 D Lincoln penny story is not about a single flaw but about a perfect storm of possibilities that elevate it into the realm of mythic rarity, beginning with the Denver Mint itself, where millions of pennies were struck during a year marked by intense production demands, equipment stress, and subtle experimental processes that rarely make headlines but quietly shape numismatic legends. And within that high-speed minting environment, opportunities for errors multiplied, including off-metal strikes where pennies may have been accidentally struck on planchets intended for other denominations, such as dime or foreign coin blanks, creating weight discrepancies that would immediately flag a coin as extraordinary when authenticated, while other pieces may have been struck on experimental alloy blends that deviated from the standard copper-plated zinc composition, potentially resulting from leftover planchets, testing batches, or transitional material mishandling that escaped quality control. And these composition anomalies alone can propel a coin's value into the stratosphere when verified. Yet the 1996 D penny's legend deepens with reports of dramatic double-die errors, where the design elements such as Lincoln's profile, the date, the mint mark, or the inscriptions "In God We Trust," "Liberty," and "United States of America" appear doubled due to misaligned dies during hubbing, and unlike minor doubling that is common and often dismissed, the alleged high-value examples display bold, clear separation visible without magnification, a feature that collectors crave because it proves the error occurred during die creation rather than during striking, making it both rarer and more historically significant. And then there is the possibility of a repunched or misplaced mint mark, a fascinating detail because although mint marks were still punched into dies by hand in 1996, errors at this stage could result in mint marks that appear tilted, doubled, partially missing, or positioned unusually close to the date. And when combined with other errors on a single coin, these traits exponentially increase desirability rather than merely adding incremental value, while another layer of intrigue comes from broadstrikes and off-center strikes, where the coin was not properly seated within the collar during striking, allowing the metal to flow outward and distort the shape, sometimes cutting off parts of the design while expanding the diameter. And although off-center errors exist across many years, a dramatic off-center strike paired with strong detail and a visible date and mint mark becomes exponentially rarer, especially when preserved in high-grade condition, which leads us to one of the most critical components of the $266 million valuation narrative: condition rarity, because even the rarest error can lose substantial value if damaged, cleaned, or excessively worn. Yet the most coveted 1996 D penny examples are said to exist in near-perfect or mint-state conditions, with original luster intact, razor-sharp details, and minimal contact marks, suggesting they were pulled from circulation almost immediately or preserved through sheer luck. And when professional grading services assign top-tier grades such as MS68, MS69, or the nearly mythical MS70 to error coins, the market response can be explosive, as collectors compete not only for rarity but for the bragging rights of owning the finest known specimen. And beyond visible errors, the 1996 D Lincoln penny's mystique is amplified by strike-through errors, where foreign materials like grease, metal shavings, or cloth fibers interfered with the strike, leaving ghostly impressions, missing details, or unusual textures on the coin's surface. And while minor grease strikes are relatively common, extreme examples that dramatically alter the coin's appearance while remaining structurally sound are exceptionally rare, particularly when combined with other minting anomalies. And then there is the tantalizing possibility of mule errors, where mismatched dies were paired together, potentially striking a penny obverse with a reverse intended for another denomination or design variant, an error so rare that confirmed examples instantly become museum-worthy pieces. And although no publicly confirmed mule involving the 1996 D penny has been widely documented, speculation persists within elite collecting circles that a handful of such coins may exist in private hands, fueling both rumor and valuation estimates. While another factor driving the staggering $266 million figure is provenance, because coins tied to documented mint mishaps, insider accounts, or legendary collections carry an aura that transcends metal and design, and if a 1996 D penny can be traced back to a specific mint batch, error discovery event, or historically significant collector, its story becomes part of its value, transforming it from an object into a narrative artifact that wealthy collectors and institutions are willing to pay a premium to own. And the role of auction psychology cannot be overstated, because when two or more ultra-wealthy bidders fixate on a singular item that represents a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, rational price ceilings dissolve, and history has repeatedly shown that record-breaking sales often result not from intrinsic value alone but from competitive desire, prestige, and the fear of missing out, all of which would apply to a one-of-a-kind or finest-known 1996 D-era penny, especially one authenticated and encapsulated by a top-tier grading service, while market timing also plays a crucial role, because interest in modern-era coins has surged as new generations of collectors enter the hobby through social media, online marketplaces, and viral discovery stories, creating unprecedented demand for coins that bridge the gap between everyday familiarity and extraordinary rarity. And the Lincoln cent, being one of the most widely recognized coins in American history, occupies a unique emotional space that amplifies public fascination, because everyone has handled a penny, which makes the idea of a single penny worth hundreds of millions both relatable and electrifying. And the $266 million valuation also reflects cumulative rarity rather than a single trait, meaning the most valuable hypothetical example would not merely have one error but several, such as a wrong planchet strike combined with a bold double die obverse, a misplaced mint mark, exceptional strike quality, and pristine condition, all documented and verified, creating a perfect convergence that may exist in only one or two examples worldwide, if at all. And this scarcity is further intensified by the reality that many error coins are unknowingly spent, damaged, or discarded before their significance is recognized, reducing the surviving population and increasing the stakes for those few that remain. And collectors often speak of the survival rate as much as the mintage, because rarity is defined not only by how many were made but by how many still exist in collectible condition. And the 1996 D penny, produced in massive quantities, ironically benefits from this dynamic, because few people would have thought to preserve them carefully at the time, making pristine error survivors exceptionally elusive. And when we consider the broader historical context, the mid-1990s represented a transitional era in mint technology, with increasing automation, evolving quality control systems, and occasional experimental processes that could introduce subtle variations. And while most of these variations were caught and corrected, a small number slipped through, becoming the anomalies that fuel today's legends. And collectors who meticulously examine their change or inherited collections often report discovering unusual weight, sound, or visual characteristics that prompt professional evaluation, reminding us that the next extraordinary find could still be hiding in plain sight. And it is this possibility that keeps the 1996 D. Lincoln penny at the forefront of numismatic conversation, not merely as a speculative headline but as a symbol of hope and curiosity, because every scratch, misalignment, or anomaly invites questions about the coin's journey from mint to pocket to potential fortune. And the $266 million figure, while extraordinary, serves as a culmination of all these factors rather than a guarantee, representing the theoretical apex value of a coin that embodies unmatched rarity, flawless preservation, verified authenticity, compelling provenance, and intense market demand. And whether or not such a sale ever occurs, the legend itself has already reshaped how collectors view modern pennies. Next, 2002 D. Lincoln penny. Today we are exploring a coin that most people would overlook without a second thought, yet collectors whisper about with awe and disbelief. A 2002 D. Lincoln penny that, under extraordinary circumstances involving rare errors, minting mistakes, and once-in-a-generation anomalies, has been rumored, discussed, and imagined as being worth an eye-watering $267 million, a figure that instantly transforms a simple copper-plated zinc cent into one of the most captivating legends in modern numismatics. And while that number may sound unbelievable at first, the value conversation becomes clearer when we carefully unpack the remarkable chain of events, production flaws, historical context, and collector psychology that can elevate an ordinary coin into a mythical object of desire. The 2002 D. Lincoln penny was struck at the Denver Mint during a year when billions of cents were produced for circulation, Yet mass production is often the breeding ground for extraordinary mistakes, because when speed, pressure, and volume collide, perfection becomes difficult to maintain, and it is within this environment that some of the most valuable mint errors in history have been born. One of the most significant possibilities tied to a $267 million valuation is a dramatic and unique wrong planchet error, where a 2002 D Lincoln cent could have been struck on a planchet intended for an entirely different denomination or even a different metal system, such as a bronze composition not officially used for that year, or a foreign planchet with an incorrect alloy, weight, and thickness, creating a coin that defies official mint specifications while still carrying a genuine Denver mint mark and authentic strike details. If such a penny were discovered with full documentation, expert verification, and an unmistakable metallurgical profile, its uniqueness alone could justify a staggering value, because collectors are not merely buying metal, they are purchasing an unrepeatable moment of failure inside a tightly controlled federal institution. Another powerful driver behind the legendary value of a 2002 D Lincoln penny lies in the possibility of a double die obverse or reverse error of unprecedented clarity, magnitude, and placement, where Lincoln's portrait, inscriptions like "Liberty," "In God We Trust," or the date itself appear dramatically doubled due to a misaligned die during the hubbing process, and unlike minor doubling that requires magnification, this hypothetical error would be bold, naked eye visible, and perfectly preserved, making it one of the most visually arresting Lincoln cent errors ever recorded. When collectors encounter such dramatic doubling combined with a modern date, the excitement multiplies because it challenges the assumption that only older coins can carry monumental value, reminding the market that rarity is not bound by age but by circumstance. Adding to this intrigue is the potential for an off-metal transitional error, where a 2002 D penny could have been struck using a composition intended for a different production era, possibly involving leftover bronze blanks from pre-1982 stock or experimental alloys used in internal mint testing, a scenario that, while rare, is not entirely impossible given historical precedent. And if proven through advanced metallurgical testing, such a coin would represent a forbidden overlap between eras, a physical contradiction to official mint records, which is exactly the kind of anomaly that fuels seven-figure and beyond valuations. Equally compelling is the idea of a mule error involving a 2002 D Lincoln cent, where the obverse die of the penny was mistakenly paired with a reverse die from another denomination or an incorrect Lincoln Memorial design variant, creating a coin that should not exist under any circumstances, and when such mule coins appear, they tend to rewrite numismatic textbooks overnight, because they expose vulnerabilities in systems designed to prevent precisely that kind of mistake. A $267 million valuation also becomes conceivable when multiple extreme errors converge on a single specimen, such as a wrong planchet combined with a double die, an off-center strike, and a broadstrike effect, all preserved in near-perfect mint state condition, because the probability of such a combination occurring is astronomically low, and rarity at that level transcends normal pricing models. Condition plays an equally critical role, because even the rarest error can lose significant value if damaged or circulated, whereas a pristine, uncirculated example with sharp details, original luster, and no post-mint impairments becomes a museum-quality artifact rather than a mere collectible. The Denver Mint mark itself adds another layer of fascination, because certain years and facilities develop reputations among collectors for producing distinctive errors, and when a particular mint is associated with a legendary mistake, demand for anything remotely similar skyrockets, creating a feedback loop where speculation, research, and storytelling amplify perceived value. The story element cannot be underestimated, because coins that achieve mythic valuations often carry narratives that resonate beyond the hobby, tales of discovery in pocket change, estate collections, or forgotten mint bags that capture the imagination of the public and media alike, turning a numismatic item into a cultural phenomenon. Another possibility fueling the $267 million conversation is the hypothetical existence of a one-of-one proof-style strike from the Denver Mint in 2002, a facility not officially responsible for proof coinage, yet history has shown that experimental or presentation strikes sometimes escape into the wild, and if a mirror-like, deeply cameo 2002 D Lincoln penny were authenticated as a genuine mint error proof with no official record, it would instantly become one of the most important modern U.S. coins ever discovered. Die clash errors also contribute to the mystique, particularly if the clashing resulted in dramatic, unmistakable impressions of opposing design elements appearing where they should never be, such as Lincoln's profile faintly visible on the reverse or architectural lines from the memorial intruding into the obverse fields, creating a ghostly, layered image that tells the story of mechanical chaos inside the press. The possibility of a rotated die error, where the reverse is misaligned at an extreme angle relative to the obverse, adds yet another dimension, because rotation errors challenge the fundamental alignment standards of U.S. coinage, and when combined with other major mistakes, they become exponentially rarer. Market psychology also plays a decisive role in reaching such an astronomical valuation, because once elite collectors, institutional investors, and museums compete for a single, incomparable object, price becomes less about intrinsic worth and more about prestige, legacy, and the desire to own something no one else can ever have. In that environment, a 2002 D. Lincoln penny ceases to be a cent and becomes a symbol of ultimate rarity, a trophy asset that represents mastery, discovery, and historical significance. Authentication and grading would be critical, involving top-tier third-party services, advanced spectroscopy, dye state analysis, and archival research, all converging to establish the coin's legitimacy beyond any doubt, because only unquestionable authenticity can sustain a valuation that high. The $267 million figure also reflects the hypothetical nature of a perfect storm scenario, where the coin is not only unique but also arrives at the right moment in market history. When interest in error coins is peaking, media attention is intense, and wealthy collectors are actively seeking headline-making acquisitions. The Lincoln Cent series itself adds emotional weight, because Abraham Lincoln is one of the most revered figures in American history, and coins bearing his likeness carry cultural resonance that amplifies collector demand, especially when the design deviates dramatically from the norm. Even the year 2002 contributes context, as it sits in a modern era of advanced mint technology, making significant errors more shocking and therefore more valuable, because they contradict assumptions of near-perfect automation. Stories surrounding hypothetical discovery scenarios, such as a coin pulled from a child's piggy bank or found in a routine roll hunt, further elevate the legend, reinforcing the idea that extraordinary value can hide in plain sight. When all these factors converge, extreme error types, absolute uniqueness, flawless condition, undeniable authenticity, powerful storytelling, and intense market competition, the idea of a 2002 D. Lincoln penny reaching a $267 million valuation, while extraordinary, becomes a compelling thought experiment that captures the imagination of collectors worldwide. As you reflect on this remarkable possibility, remember that every coin has a story waiting to be uncovered, and sometimes the smallest denomination can carry the biggest surprise. So if you enjoyed this exploration into one of the most fascinating what-if scenarios in modern numismatics, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay curious, because the next life-changing coin could already be sitting quietly in your pocket. Next, 1998 D. Lincoln penny. Today we are diving deep into a story that sounds impossible yet continues to ignite curiosity across the coin collecting universe. The astonishing tale of a 1998 D. Lincoln penny that, under extraordinary circumstances of errors, mistakes, and rare minting anomalies, has been rumored, imagined, debated, and discussed as a coin that could reach an eye-watering value of $268 million. A figure that instantly transforms an ordinary cent into a legend. And as we explore this story together, keep an open mind, because numismatics is a field where history, metal, human error, and chance collide in ways that can defy expectations and create myths that feel just within reach. The 1998 D. Lincoln penny began its life like billions of others, struck at the Denver Mint during a period of massive production when pennies were churned out by the truckload to meet everyday commerce needs. Yet it is precisely this environment of speed, volume, and pressure that creates the perfect conditions for rare errors to slip through unnoticed, and collectors know that when mistakes escape quality control, they can become priceless windows into the minting process. One of the most talked about possibilities surrounding the 1998 D penny involves dramatic double die errors, where misalignment during the hubbing process can cause strong, visible doubling on Lincoln's portrait, the date, or inscriptions such as "Liberty" and "In God We Trust." And when this doubling is bold, clean, and unmistakable, it can multiply a coin's value exponentially, especially when combined with pristine preservation and verified authenticity. Another layer of intrigue comes from off-metal errors, which occur when a planchet intended for another denomination or even another year is mistakenly fed into the penny press, creating a coin that looks wrong in weight, color, thickness, and sometimes sound, and if a genuine 1998 penny were struck on a silver, experimental alloy, or foreign planchet, the result would be an extraordinary rarity that could rewrite record books and fuel valuations that stretch into the hundreds of millions. When combined with other anomalies, equally compelling is the possibility of transitional errors, because the late 1990s were a time of experimentation and adjustments in metal composition, plating techniques, and minting equipment, meaning that a penny struck with an incorrect copper plating thickness, a missing zinc core, or an improperly bonded layer could exhibit unusual surfaces, bubbling, peeling, or color variations that immediately signal something extraordinary to trained eyes. Die breaks and cud errors also play a role in this legendary valuation, as massive cracks or chunks missing from the die can leave dramatic raised blobs of metal on the finished coin, creating unique shapes that can never be replicated exactly. And when such features appear prominently on Lincoln's face or key design elements, they elevate the coin from a curiosity to a one-of-a-kind artifact. The idea of a $268 million valuation does not come from a single error alone, because in the world of elite numismatics, value skyrockets when multiple rare factors converge on one specimen, such as a strong double die paired with an off-metal strike, a rotated die alignment, and near-perfect mint state preservation, a combination so unlikely that it borders on miraculous. Preservation is critical in this story, because condition can mean the difference between thousands and millions, and a 1998 penny that somehow avoided circulation damage, fingerprints, scratches, or environmental exposure, remaining in a pristine state with original luster intact, would stand apart from the billions of worn examples that pass through hands unnoticed every day. Another fascinating angle lies in the concept of mule errors, where mismatched obverse and reverse dies from different denominations or years are paired together accidentally, creating a hybrid coin that should never exist. And if a genuine mule involving a 1998 Lincoln obverse were discovered, it would instantly become one of the most famous modern mint errors ever known. Collectors also speculate about wrong mint mark styles, repunched mint marks, or mint marks appearing in unusual positions, especially during transitional periods when minting practices were evolving, and although the Denver Mint's D is typically consistent, anomalies can and do occur, sometimes subtly, sometimes boldly enough to demand attention. The story grows even richer when considering die polishing errors, missing details, or over-polished dies that erase fine elements of the design, leaving Lincoln's portrait ghostly smooth or inscriptions partially absent, because such mistakes reveal the human side of minting, where attempts to extend die life inadvertently create rare variations. The market psychology surrounding ultra-rare coins cannot be ignored, because value is not determined solely by metal or age, but by demand, narrative, and uniqueness, and a coin that captures public imagination, backed by expert verification and media attention, can achieve valuations that seem surreal, especially when wealthy collectors compete for the chance to own something no one else can. The 1998 penny legend also taps into the dream that anyone, anywhere, could unknowingly possess a fortune, because these coins were released into circulation, meaning that a life-changing discovery could be sitting in a jar, a drawer, or an old roll tucked away and forgotten. Authentication would be the pivotal moment in such a discovery, involving metallurgical testing, die state analysis, weight verification, and microscopic examination by top grading services, because only through rigorous scrutiny could such an extraordinary claim withstand skepticism. Skeptics rightly point out that valuations in the hundreds of millions are extremely rare, yet history shows that unique artifacts, whether coins, stamps, or artworks, can shatter expectations when rarity meets obsession, and in this sense, the 1998 penny represents the ultimate modern numismatic fantasy. Another dimension of this tale involves experimental dies or test strikes, which are sometimes produced in small numbers for calibration or testing and are never meant to leave the mint. Yet history has proven that such pieces occasionally escape, becoming legendary rarities when discovered decades later. The late 1990s were also a time of technological upgrades at the mints, introducing new machinery and processes, and transitions of this nature are fertile ground for unusual errors, misfeeds, and alignment problems that can result in coins unlike anything else produced before or since. Even strike-through errors, where foreign material like grease, cloth, or metal shavings obstruct the die during striking, can create dramatic missing or distorted features, and when such errors are extensive yet visually striking, they can add another layer of uniqueness to an already rare coin. What fuels the $268 million narrative is not just the technical errors themselves, but the sheer improbability of all these factors aligning in a single 1998 penny, surviving intact, being discovered, authenticated, and presented to the world, because rarity squared by condition and story creates exponential value. The Lincoln cent itself carries immense cultural weight, being one of the longest-running coin designs in U.S. history, and any anomaly within such an iconic series resonates deeply with collectors and the public alike. The Denver Mint's output is typically well-controlled, which paradoxically makes any confirmed error from that facility even more intriguing, because it challenges assumptions about consistency and precision. As stories circulate online, in collector forums, and at coin shows, the legend grows, inspiring people to examine their change more closely, to learn about die varieties, planchet errors, and minting history, and to appreciate the craftsmanship and fallibility behind everyday objects. The possibility of a 1998 D penny reaching such a staggering valuation also highlights how numismatics blends science and storytelling, because while facts and verification matter, so too does the narrative that captures hearts and imaginations. In this sense, the coin becomes more than metal. It becomes a symbol of chance, curiosity, and the thrill of discovery. Whether or not a single 1998 D Lincoln penny ever truly sells for $268 million, the idea itself serves a powerful purpose, reminding us that value can be hidden in plain sight, that mistakes can become masterpieces, and that history often leaves behind clues waiting to be noticed. As you reflect on this story, consider the pennies you have ignored, the change you have spent without a second thought, and the countless opportunities for wonder that pass through our hands every day, because sometimes, the smallest coin carries the biggest story, and sometimes, a simple cent holds the promise of an extraordinary legacy that continues to inspire collectors, dreamers, and treasure hunters around the world. Next, 1976 Lincoln penny. Today we are diving into one of the most talked about and mysterious modern coin stories ever imagined, the 1976 Lincoln penny that stunned collectors around the world with whispers of a staggering valuation reaching as high as $269 million. A number that sounds impossible at first but begins to make sense once you understand the extraordinary convergence of errors, minting mistakes, historical timing, and collector psychology that surround this single-year cent, because the 1976 Lincoln penny was struck during America's bicentennial era, a time of intense patriotic production pressure at U.S. mints, and whenever pressure, speed, and massive output collide, the door opens to mistakes that can transform ordinary copper into legendary treasure. And this story is not about a normal circulated penny you find in loose change, but about a hypothetical perfect storm example where multiple ultra-rare errors appear together on one coin in a way that should not exist according to mint standards, beginning with the possibility of a transitional metal planchet error, because while most 1976 pennies were struck in the familiar copper alloy used before the 1982 change, experimental alloys were being tested quietly behind the scenes, and if a 1976 Lincoln cent were struck on an unauthorized or experimental planchet, especially one intended for another denomination or another year entirely, the rarity would instantly skyrocket, particularly if metallurgical testing confirmed a composition mismatch that could not be replicated or explained away as damage, and layered onto this is the potential for a double die obverse of extreme magnitude. Not the minor doubling that collectors casually spot, but a bold, dramatic separation visible to the naked eye across Lincoln's profile, the date, and the inscriptions, creating a ghosted appearance that reflects a hubbing misalignment during die creation, and when such doubling is paired with a matching double die reverse, the rarity multiplies exponentially because matched obverse and reverse double dies from the same year are almost unheard of, especially in the modern era, and then comes the possibility of a dramatic off-center strike combined with a broad strike, where the coin was not properly seated within the collar, allowing metal to flow outward unnaturally while still retaining a readable full date, a crucial detail for valuation, because coins without a clear date lose historical attribution, while those with full legibility and extreme deformation become elite collectibles. And as if that were not enough, imagine the presence of a retained cut error, where a piece of the die breaks but remains attached, leaving a raised blob of metal that interrupts the design in a way that visually documents the die's destruction. And collectors value these errors not just for rarity but for the story they tell about the violent stresses of minting, and on this hypothetical 1976 penny, that cud might intrude into Lincoln's bust or the lettering, creating a dramatic focal point that instantly separates it from any standard cent. And then there is the whisper of a wrong mint mark anomaly, because although mint marks were still hand-punched in 1976, errors involving misplaced, repunched, or even ghost mint marks have fueled collector fascination for decades, and a 1976 penny showing evidence of an impossible mint mark configuration, such as traces suggesting two different mint origins, would ignite intense debate and scholarly analysis, which in turn drives value through notoriety, and beyond physical errors, provenance plays a massive role, because if such a coin surfaced from a sealed estate, an old mint worker collection, or a forgotten safety deposit box with documentation dating back decades, the credibility and mystique would multiply, transforming the coin from a curiosity into a historical artifact. And when grading services encounter a coin that defies expectations, they often encapsulate it with detailed annotations, and those words on the holder can be as valuable as the metal itself, because a label reading multiple simultaneous mint errors confirmed becomes a magnet for high-end collectors and museums alike, and condition is the final amplifier, because errors are common in lower grades but nearly mythical in near-perfect states, and a 1976 Lincoln penny exhibiting all these anomalies while still retaining sharp details, original luster, and minimal contact marks, would exist outside normal probability curves, and markets thrive on improbability, because collectors are not just buying metal, they are buying the chance to own something that statistically should not exist. And this is where the $269 million figure enters the conversation, not as a typical auction estimate, but as a symbolic valuation representing what a single irreplaceable object might command if multiple billionaire collectors, institutions, and private foundations competed for the right to own the most extreme modern penny ever documented. Because when an item becomes singular, price guides become irrelevant, and value becomes whatever the highest bidder is willing to pay to secure immortality within numismatic history. And psychology plays a massive role here, because coins like this become legends long before they are sold, spreading through forums, videos, and whispered conversations at coin shows, each retelling amplifying the myth. And as attention grows, so does perceived value, creating a feedback loop where fame fuels demand and demand fuels price, and the 1976 date itself adds symbolic weight, because bicentennial-era artifacts already carry emotional resonance tied to American identity, making such a coin appealing beyond traditional collectors to investors, historians, and cultural curators. And another possibility that drives the valuation into the stratosphere is the theory of a mule error, where mismatched dies from different denominations or years were accidentally paired, and while no confirmed 1976 penny mule of this magnitude has been publicly verified, the discovery of one would rewrite reference books overnight, especially if the reverse design showed characteristics inconsistent with Lincoln's sense of that year. And when combined with authentication from multiple independent experts, the coin would become untouchable in status. And it is important to understand that ultra-high valuations are not built on metal value but on narrative, uniqueness, and verified impossibility, and the more a coin challenges what experts believe they know, the more valuable it becomes, because it forces the hobby to evolve. And this is why collectors search rolls endlessly, because every once in a while reality bends and an ordinary object becomes extraordinary. And while most 1976 pennies are worth 1 cent or slightly more in pristine condition, the dream of a multimillion-dollar outlier keeps the hunt alive and fuels channels like this one, because hidden in everyday change could be a mistake that escaped quality control during a year when the mint was under immense pressure to meet patriotic demand, and that mistake, preserved against all odds, could carry the combined weight of error science, historical symbolism, and collector obsession. And whether or not such a coin ever trades hands for $269 million, the concept itself highlights why numismatics remains endlessly fascinating, because value is not fixed. It is discovered, debated, and ultimately decided by those who recognize significance where others see nothing. And as you continue exploring coins in your pocket, in old jars, or inherited collections, remember that history does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers through copper, through doubling, through cracks, and through impossible combinations that challenge everything we think we know about ordinary money. And that is why stories like the 1976 Lincoln penny endure, capturing imagination, fueling hope, and reminding us that even the smallest objects can carry unimaginable worth when rarity, error, and history collide. Next, 1967 Lincoln penny. Today, as we dive into one of the most astonishing and mysterious stories in American coin history, a story that has captured the imagination of collectors, treasure hunters, and everyday people alike, because it suggests that an ordinary coin you might overlook every day could secretly be worth an unimaginable fortune. And that coin is the 1967 Lincoln penny, a humble 1-cent piece that, under extraordinary circumstances involving rare errors, unusual minting mistakes, and highly debated possibilities, has been rumored and speculated to command a staggering value of up to $270 million, making it one of the most talked-about modern-era Lincoln cents ever discussed. The fascination with the 1967 Lincoln penny begins with the era in which it was produced, because the late 1960s were a turbulent time for the United States Mint, marked by coin shortages, rapid changes in minting practices, and experimental approaches to materials and dyes that unintentionally created opportunities for rare mistakes. In 1967, the Mint was still responding to widespread hoarding of coins due to rising metal values, and as a result, mint marks were temporarily removed from U.S. coins to discourage collectors from saving new issues, meaning that all 1967 pennies were struck without mint marks, a decision that already makes identifying their origin more complex and intriguing. The standard 1967 Lincoln penny was composed of 95% copper and 5% zinc, weighed approximately 3.11 grams, and featured the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. Yet within this seemingly ordinary design lies the potential for extraordinary anomalies that can transform a common cent into a legendary rarity. One of the most discussed and dramatic possibilities that could elevate a 1967 penny to a valuation of $270 million is the existence of a transitional metal error, a scenario in which a coin is struck on the wrong planchet intended for a different denomination or experimental composition. During the 1960s, the Mint was actively testing alternative metals due to rising copper prices, and while the officially documented transition to copper-plated zinc cents did not occur until 1982, some collectors believe that experimental planchets or foreign coin blanks could have been mistakenly fed into the presses in 1967, resulting in pennies struck on bronze alloys of unusual composition, aluminum patterns, or even planchets intended for higher denominations. If a genuine 1967 Lincoln penny were discovered struck on an experimental aluminum planchet, similar to the famous 1974 aluminum cents that are tightly controlled and rarely seen, such a coin would instantly become one of the most important numismatic discoveries of the century, because it would represent an undocumented experiment and a breach of mint protocol, driving its value into the realm of hundreds of millions due to its uniqueness, historical importance, and legal complexity. Another error category that fuels the incredible valuation claims is the double die error, particularly an extreme double die obverse or reverse that shows dramatic doubling on the date, the word liberty, the motto "In God We Trust," or the inscriptions on the Lincoln Memorial. While minor doubling is relatively common and often dismissed as machine doubling, a true double die created during the hubbing process produces strong, rounded, and clearly separated images that cannot be replicated after the coin is struck. A hypothetical 1967 penny with an unprecedented, ultra-strong double die affecting multiple design elements simultaneously, combined with pristine condition and full original luster, could stand alone as the finest and most dramatic example of its kind, making it priceless in the eyes of elite collectors who compete fiercely for unique errors. Equally compelling is the possibility of a wrong metal strike involving precious metals, such as a 1967 Lincoln penny struck on a silver, gold, or even platinum planchet, whether intended for foreign coinage, metals, or experimental purposes. The discovery of such a coin would defy conventional expectations and challenge established mint records, but history has shown that wrong metal errors do occur, and when they do, they command extraordinary premiums. A confirmed 1967 penny struck on gold, for example, would not only be valuable for its metal content but also for its status as a unique minting anomaly, potentially elevating its worth into the hundreds of millions due to intense demand from museums, private collectors, and investors seeking the ultimate trophy piece. Another major factor that contributes to the legendary status of the 1967 penny is the potential for a dramatic off-metal or off-center strike combined with other errors, creating what collectors call a multiple-error coin. Imagine a 1967 Lincoln penny that is struck off-center by a significant margin, missing a portion of the design, while also being double-struck and struck on a wrong planchet. Such a combination would be extraordinarily rare, and if authenticated, it would represent a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. The value of error coins increases exponentially when multiple errors occur on a single specimen, because each error compounds the rarity and complexity of the piece, making it nearly impossible to replicate. Die errors also play a critical role in the mythology surrounding the 1967 penny, particularly the idea of a cracked die, cud error, or retained cud that dramatically alters the appearance of the coin. A massive cud, where a portion of the die breaks away and leaves a raised, blob-like area on the coin, can be visually striking and highly desirable, especially if it affects Lincoln's portrait or a major design element. If such a cud were unique to a single die state and never repeated, the resulting coin could become a legendary specimen known to the entire numismatic community. Another intriguing possibility is the existence of a 1967 penny with a missing or distorted design element caused by grease-filled dies or improperly prepared dies, leading to coins that appear to lack inscriptions, dates, or even parts of Lincoln's portrait. While grease-filled die errors are not uncommon, an extreme example where critical identifying features are almost completely absent, combined with exceptional preservation and documentation, could elevate the coin's status far beyond typical error pieces. The condition of the coin is another crucial factor in determining its theoretical $270 million value, because even the rarest error can lose much of its appeal if it is heavily worn, damaged, or altered. A flawless 1967 error penny preserved in mint state with sharp details, full luster, and no post-mint damage would be the ultimate prize, especially if it were graded and authenticated by a top-tier third-party grading service. Provenance also plays a significant role, because a coin with a well-documented history, perhaps discovered in a sealed mint bag, an old collection, or an estate with clear records, carries greater credibility and desirability than a coin with an uncertain origin. The psychological and cultural factors surrounding the 1967 Lincoln penny further amplify its mystique, because it represents the idea that incredible wealth can be hidden in plain sight, accessible to anyone who takes the time to look closely at the change in their pocket. Stories of rare pennies being discovered by ordinary people fuel public fascination and drive interest in coin roll hunting, estate searches, and inherited collections, creating a constant sense of anticipation that the next great discovery could happen at any moment. The rumored $270 million valuation is not merely about metal or mistakes. It is about the convergence of rarity, mystery, historical context, and human imagination, all of which combine to elevate a simple copper coin into a symbol of possibility and wonder. Some theories even suggest that a 1967 penny could exist with a unique alignment error, such as a rotated die where the obverse and reverse are dramatically misaligned, creating a striking visual effect that would immediately set the coin apart from all others. While rotated dies are known, an extreme rotation combined with other errors and pristine condition would be extraordinarily rare and highly prized. There is also speculation about a mule error, where the obverse and reverse dies from different coin types are mistakenly paired, although no confirmed 1967 Lincoln penny mule has been officially recognized. The mere possibility of such an error keeps collectors searching and dreaming. The market dynamics of high-end numismatics further explain how a 1967 penny could theoretically reach a $270 million valuation, because when a coin is truly unique, traditional price guides become irrelevant, and the final value is determined by what the most motivated buyers are willing to pay. In private treaty sales or high-profile auctions, wealthy collectors and institutions may engage in bidding wars for singular artifacts, driving prices to unprecedented levels that reflect not just monetary value but also prestige, legacy, and historical significance. Next, 2008 D. Lincoln penny. Today, because you are about to hear a story that turns an ordinary pocket coin into a jaw-dropping legend. A story that has collectors, historians, and everyday people checking their change with new excitement, all centered around the 2008 D. Lincoln penny. A coin that most people have spent without a second thought, yet one that, under extraordinary circumstances of errors, mistakes, and rare possibilities, has been whispered about as being worth an astonishing $271 million. And as we dive into this tale together, imagine holding a simple copper-colored cent between your fingers while realizing that history, chance, and human imperfection may have combined to transform it into one of the most valuable objects in modern numismatics. The 2008 D. Lincoln penny was produced at the Denver Mint during a year of massive coin production, a time when billions of pennies were struck to meet circulation demand, and it carried the familiar Abraham Lincoln portrait on the obverse, paired with the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, making it appear at first glance to be entirely ordinary. However, Collectors know that it is precisely in such high-volume years that some of the most fascinating mint errors can occur, because speed, pressure, worn dies, and human oversight sometimes align in ways no one expects. One of the most talked about possibilities surrounding this penny involves dramatic die errors, where the metal dies used to strike the coin may have been cracked, chipped, misaligned, or even improperly prepared, creating anomalies that are instantly visible to trained eyes and sometimes breathtaking in their scale, such as massive die breaks that leave raised blobs of metal, or retained cut errors where a broken piece of the die remains in place long enough to strike multiple coins with a strange, almost sculptural appearance. Another powerful factor contributing to the mythical value of the 2008 D penny is the possibility of a double die error, a mistake that occurs when the die itself is impressed more than once with a misalignment, leading to doubled lettering, numbers, or design elements that look as if they are vibrating or shadowed. And while minor doubling is fairly common, an extreme double die showing bold, clear separation in the date, the word liberty, or in God we trust, would elevate a coin into elite status almost instantly. Equally compelling is the chance of a wrong planchet error, a scenario where the penny is struck on a blank intended for a different denomination or even a different metal composition. And although the mint has strict controls, history proves that such mistakes do slip through, resulting in cents struck on dime planchets, foreign coin blanks, or experimental alloys, any of which would cause the coin to weigh differently, sound different when dropped, and appear subtly or dramatically off in color and thickness. The year 2008 is particularly intriguing because it sits just before the United States Mint transitioned in 2009 to the Lincoln bicentennial designs, meaning the Mint was under pressure to maintain production while preparing for a major design change, a situation that can increase the likelihood of overlooked errors, rushed die changes, or improper quality checks. Some theories even speculate about transitional metal errors, where leftover or test materials from other years might have been accidentally used, creating a penny with an unexpected composition that defies standard specifications, and if such a coin were confirmed and authenticated, it would become a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. Adding to the legend is the possibility of extreme off-center strikes, where the coin is not properly aligned in the press, resulting in part of the design missing entirely, sometimes exposing a crescent of blank metal. And while modest off-center coins are collectible, a perfectly dramatic example that still shows the full date and mint mark could command extraordinary attention and value. There is also the fascination with broadstrikes, coins that are struck without the retaining collar that normally shapes the edge, causing the metal to spread outward and create a wider, thinner coin with distorted details, and when such errors are combined with other anomalies, like doubling or die cracks, they become exponentially more desirable. The Denver Mint's D mint mark plays a crucial role in this narrative, because mint-specific errors can be rarer than their Philadelphia counterparts, and collectors often chase Denver issues precisely because they sometimes reveal unique characteristics tied to specific equipment or production runs. Another layer of intrigue comes from the condition of the coin, because even the most dramatic error loses some appeal if the coin is heavily worn or damaged after leaving the mint, whereas a pristine, uncirculated example preserved with sharp details and original luster can multiply its value many times over, especially if it has been stored away unnoticed for years, untouched by circulation. Stories circulate within the collecting community about rolls of 2008 D pennies set aside by cautious individuals during the economic uncertainty of that time, rolls that may still be sealed, waiting to reveal hidden treasures that have never seen the light of day. Beyond physical errors, there is also the psychological and historical value that builds around a coin once a narrative takes hold, because the idea that a humble cent could be worth hundreds of millions of dollars captures the imagination of the public, drawing attention far beyond traditional collectors and into mainstream culture, where rarity, mystery, and the dream of sudden fortune collide. Authentication would be critical in any such case, requiring examination by top grading services using advanced technology to analyze metal composition, strike characteristics, and die markers, and only with such verification could a claim of extreme value even be considered. Yet the mere possibility fuels endless discussion and speculation. Some experts argue that the astronomical valuation is tied not to a single known example, but to a hypothetical perfect storm coin, one that combines multiple major errors in one piece, such as a dramatic double die, struck on a wrong planchet with a massive die break, all preserved in near flawless condition, a combination so unlikely that its existence would redefine modern numismatics. The market dynamics also play a role, because value is ultimately driven by demand, and if a coin captures global attention, attracts wealthy collectors, museums, and investors, and becomes a symbol of rarity and chance, its price can soar beyond traditional expectations, much like famous art pieces or historical artifacts. The 2008 D. Lincoln penny, in this context, becomes more than a coin. It becomes a canvas of possibility, a reminder that even in an age of automation and precision, human systems are still capable of producing marvels through error. Each tiny detail, from the spacing of the letters to the thickness of the rim, becomes a clue, inviting scrutiny and debate, and encouraging people everywhere to look more closely at what they might otherwise overlook. The idea that a coin worth 1 cent could change a life forever resonates deeply, because it speaks to hope, curiosity, and the thrill of discovery, values that are timeless and universal. As collectors examine their jars, drawers, and inherited collections, the story of the 2008 penny continues to grow, fueled by anecdotes, rumored finds, and the enduring belief that somewhere, perhaps still unnoticed, lies a cent that embodies all these extraordinary traits. Whether such a coin has already been struck, lost, or quietly resting in a forgotten roll is unknown. Yet that uncertainty is part of what makes the tale so compelling, because it keeps the search alive and the imagination engaged. In the end, the legend of the 2008 Lincoln penny is not just about money, but about awareness, about understanding how history, craftsmanship, and imperfection intersect, and about realizing that value is sometimes hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone patient and curious enough to recognize it. And that is why this small copper coin continues to inspire big dreams and endless fascination, reminding us all that sometimes the most extraordinary stories begin with the most ordinary objects. Next, 2012 D. Lincoln penny. Today we are exploring the legendary 2012 D. Lincoln penny, a coin that at first glance looks like pocket change but, under rare circumstances shaped by errors, mistakes, and extraordinary possibilities, has become the centerpiece of one of the most talked about numismatic legends of the 21st century. And as you settle in, imagine the millions of pennies that passed through hands in 2012, spent without a second thought, while a microscopic fraction of them may have carried subtle flaws, capable of transforming copper-plated zinc into an object of immense desire, mystery, and speculation. The 2012 D. Lincoln penny was struck at the Denver Mint during a year of massive production, a time when billions of cents were manufactured to meet everyday circulation demand, and it features the familiar modern Lincoln obverse designed by Victor David Brenner, paired with the Union Shield reverse introduced only a few years earlier, symbolizing national unity. On paper, nothing about the design seems revolutionary, yet it is precisely the high-speed, high-volume environment of modern minting that creates fertile ground for dramatic errors, and in rare instances, these errors align in such an improbable way that a coin transcends face value and enters the realm of legend. The idea that a 2012 D penny could be worth hundreds of millions of dollars rests not on a single flaw but on a hypothetical convergence of multiple extreme mint errors, historical circumstances, pristine preservation, and intense collector demand, all amplified by the mystique that surrounds undocumented or scarcely documented anomalies in modern coinage. One of the most significant factors discussed in relation to this penny is the possibility of a transitional planchet error, a mistake that occurs when a coin is struck on the wrong type of metal blank. And while the U.S. Mint officially struck 2012 pennies on zinc cores plated with copper, the theoretical discovery of a penny struck on an experimental alloy, a leftover copper planchet, or even a foreign metal blank intended for another denomination would instantly propel that coin into unprecedented territory, especially if the metal composition were verified by multiple independent laboratories using non-destructive testing methods such as X-ray fluorescence. Adding to this intrigue is the concept of a double die error so dramatic that it affects not just one area of the design but multiple key elements, including Lincoln's profile, the date, the mint mark, and the inscriptions "In God We Trust" and "Liberty," creating strong, clearly separated doubling visible to the naked eye. While minor doubling is relatively common, a bold, multi-area double die on a modern penny would be almost unheard of, and if such a coin existed in flawless condition, its uniqueness alone could justify astronomical valuations in the speculative market. Beyond doubling, collectors often point to the possibility of a major off-metal strike combined with a wrong planchet error, such as a 2012 D penny struck on a silver-colored planchet intended for a dime or a brass planchet meant for a foreign coin. And when paired with a misalignment that causes part of the design to be missing or distorted, the resulting coin would be visually stunning, instantly recognizable, and virtually impossible to replicate, making it a once-in-a-generation discovery. Another layer of fascination involves die clashes and retained cuds, where broken pieces of the die create raised, irregular blobs on the coin's surface, and while small cuds are known, a massive retained cud intersecting Lincoln's portrait and the shield reverse, combined with other errors, would elevate the coin into the realm of numismatic folklore. The Denver Mint's role in this story is also critical because the D mint mark ties the coin to a specific facility, production batch, and set of dies, allowing researchers to theorize about how a sequence of mechanical failures, human oversight, and timing could have produced a handful of extreme error coins before detection and correction halted the process. Condition plays an equally important role, because for a coin to reach a valuation as high as $272 million, it would need to exist in near-perfect or perfect state, graded at the highest levels by respected third-party grading services, with full original luster, razor-sharp details, no post-mint damage, and unquestionable authenticity, a combination that becomes exponentially rarer when dealing with error coins that often suffer damage or circulation where before being discovered. The story grows even more compelling when speculation turns to the possibility of a mule error, a mistake in which mismatched dies are paired together, such as a Lincoln cent obverse struck with a reverse intended for an entirely different denomination or even a different series, and while mules are among the rarest of all mint errors, their documented existence proves that the impossible can sometimes slip through the cracks of even the most controlled minting environments. Supporters of the 2012 D penny legend often argue that modern technology does not eliminate errors but instead changes their nature, allowing fewer mistakes to escape but making those that do escape even more significant, because they represent a breakdown in systems designed to be nearly foolproof, and collectors are often drawn to these anomalies as tangible evidence that perfection is elusive, even in highly automated processes. The valuation narrative is further fueled by the psychology of collecting, where the intersection of rarity, story, and symbolism can push prices far beyond intrinsic material value. And in this case, the Lincoln penny carries immense cultural weight as a symbol of American history, democracy, and everyday life, making an ultra-rare example especially powerful in the imagination of wealthy collectors, museums, and investors seeking a trophy piece that no one else can own. The hypothetical $272 million price tag is not presented as a routine auction estimate but as the upper boundary of what such a coin could command in a private sale, driven by competitive bidding among ultra-high net worth individuals, institutional collectors, and perhaps even national museums, each motivated by prestige, legacy, and the desire to possess a singular artifact that challenges conventional understanding of modern coinage. Another possibility often discussed involves intentional experimental strikes, where test planchets or prototype dies are used during internal trials and inadvertently released into circulation. And while the U.S. Mint maintains strict controls, history shows that experimental pieces have escaped in the past, only to be recognized decades later, and if a 2012 D penny were proven to be one of these experimental strikes, complete with documentation or metallurgical evidence pointing to an unapproved alloy or design variant, its significance would be immeasurable. The conversation also touches on microengraving errors, missing designer initials, or altered relief heights caused by improperly prepared dies. Subtle features that might go unnoticed for years until a sharp-eyed collector examines the coin under magnification and realizes that something fundamental is different. And when such subtle anomalies are paired with more obvious errors, the cumulative effect becomes extraordinary. It is important to understand that the legend of the 2012 D penny is built as much on possibility as on confirmed examples. And that is precisely what keeps collectors searching through rolls, jars, and bank boxes, because the chance, however slim, of discovering a coin that defies expectations is what fuels the hobby, and every newly found error, no matter how minor, adds another piece to the puzzle. The market dynamics surrounding such a coin would be unlike anything seen before, because traditional price guides cannot account for unique items, and valuation would instead be shaped by narrative strength, media attention, expert endorsement, and the emotional responses of potential buyers, all of which can amplify perceived value far beyond rational benchmarks. Skeptics rightly point out that no publicly verified sale at such a figure has occurred, yet history is filled with examples of once-dismissed rarities that later achieved astonishing prices when circumstances aligned, reminding us that today's speculation can become tomorrow's reality. Ultimately, the tale of the 2012 D. Lincoln penny serves as a modern parable about attention, curiosity, and the hidden complexity of ordinary objects, encouraging people to look more closely at the coins they handle every day, to question assumptions, and to appreciate the intricate processes behind even the smallest units of currency. As this story continues to circulate, evolve, and inspire debate, it reinforces the idea that value is not solely determined by metal content or face denomination but by rarity, error, story, and human fascination, and whether or not a $272 million 2012 D penny ever surfaces. The legend itself has already secured a permanent place in the world of numismatics, reminding us that sometimes the most extraordinary treasures are hiding in plain sight, waiting for the right moment, the right eyes, and the right understanding to reveal their true significance. Next, 1997 Lincoln penny. Today, as we dive into one of the most fascinating and talked about coin stories in modern numismatics, a story that has collectors, treasure hunters, and everyday pocket change checkers buzzing with excitement. Because what if the humble penny sitting unnoticed in a jar or drawer could actually be worth an unbelievable fortune? And today we are exploring exactly that possibility by uncovering the mystery, myths, documented errors, rare production anomalies, and extraordinary circumstances that have led many experts, enthusiasts, and speculative valuations to place a staggering potential figure of up to $273 million on an exceptionally rare 1997 Lincoln penny, a coin that at first glance looks ordinary, yet under the surface carries a perfect storm of mistakes, minting accidents, material anomalies, and historical timing that together form one of the most dramatic value narratives in coin collecting history. The 1997 Lincoln penny was produced in massive quantities, with hundreds of millions struck across multiple United States mint facilities, which is exactly why the idea of one being worth a fortune sounds unbelievable. Yet in numismatics, rarity is not always about how many coins were made, but about how few survived with specific, highly unusual characteristics, and this is where the 1997 penny begins to separate itself from the rest. During the late 1990s, the U.S. Mint was undergoing adjustments in metal composition, quality control automation, die usage limits, and production speed, all of which increased the likelihood of subtle but critical errors slipping through unnoticed, especially during high-volume runs intended for circulation rather than collector scrutiny. One of the most significant contributors to the legendary valuation of a 1997 Lincoln penny is the possibility of a transitional metal error, where a coin intended to be struck on the standard copper-plated zinc planchet was instead struck on an experimental or leftover bronze or copper alloy blank, resulting in a penny with dramatically different weight, density, acoustic ring, and long-term durability. Such transitional errors are among the most valuable coins in American history because they represent physical proof of internal mint processes accidentally exposed to the public. A genuine 1997 penny struck on a pre-1982 copper planchet or an undocumented alloy test blank would instantly become unique or near unique, and uniqueness in numismatics is where valuations can soar into the tens or even hundreds of millions when competition among elite collectors intensifies. Another crucial factor lies in double die errors, particularly double die obverse varieties where Lincoln's portrait, the date, or inscriptions like Liberty and In God We Trust show strong, clearly separated doubling caused by misalignment during the die creation process rather than post-mint damage. If an extreme double die variety from 1997 were discovered, especially one that escaped early detection and exists in pristine mint state condition, it could eclipse the value of famous double die cents like those from 1955 or 1969's due to its modern rarity and the improbability of survival. Beyond doubling, the 1997 penny is also rumored to exist in ultra-rare off-metal strikes, including experimental steel cores, aluminum test blanks, or multi-layered planchets created through bonding errors, each of which would represent a minting impossibility under normal circumstances, and yet history has repeatedly shown that impossible coins do exist, often surfacing decades later from old collections, inherited estates, or forgotten bank rolls. Die cap errors, broadstrikes with missing collars, and partial collar strikes further add to the list of anomalies that could elevate a 1997 penny into legendary status, especially if combined with other errors on the same coin, creating what collectors call a compound error, which is exponentially rarer than a single mistake. Perhaps the most intriguing and valuable possibility is the existence of a wrong date or mule error, where a 1997 obverse die was accidentally paired with a reverse die from a different year, proof series, or even a different denomination, creating a coin that defies official mint records. Such mules are among the rarest coins ever discovered, often commanding seven-figure prices even before considering condition, pedigree, or historical context. Condition itself plays a monumental role in the speculative $273 million valuation, because a coin with world-class errors that also grades at the highest levels, such as MS68 or MS69 with full original luster and no post-mint damage, becomes not just a rarity but a masterpiece, a museum-quality artifact that institutions and private collectors alike would fight to own. Adding to this value is provenance, because a 1997 penny tied to a documented mint worker estate, a sealed original mint bag, or early discovery with third-party authentication creates a narrative that fuels collector desire, and in high-end numismatic storytelling can be nearly as powerful as metal content or strike quality. The Lincoln Penny series itself adds emotional and historical weight, since it is the longest-running coin design in U.S. history, beloved by generations, and deeply associated with American identity, which means that any anomaly within this series automatically attracts attention from the widest possible audience of collectors, investors, and historians. Another layer to the extraordinary valuation theory comes from the modern rarity paradox, where coins from recent decades are often overlooked and destroyed through circulation where zinc rot or casual disposal, making high-grade survivors with major errors far rarer than comparable coins from the early 20th century that were saved intentionally. This means a flawless 1997 error penny might be rarer in practice than many older, more famous coins. Market psychology also plays a role, because the discovery of a single confirmed ultra-rare 1997 penny would trigger intense competition among elite buyers, including private billionaires, investment funds specializing in tangible assets, and museums seeking headline acquisitions, all of which can drive prices far beyond traditional valuation models. The speculative figure of $273 million is not merely about metal or minting mistakes. It represents the theoretical peak of what such a coin could command if it combined a never-before-seen error, pristine condition, ironclad authentication, and perfect timing within a heated collector market hungry for the next legendary discovery. It is also worth noting that advances in authentication technology have made it possible to identify microscopic die markers, alloy compositions, and strike anomalies that were invisible decades ago, meaning that coins dismissed in the past could now be reclassified as unique treasures, potentially rewriting price expectations overnight. The story of the 1997 Lincoln penny serves as a reminder that value often hides in plain sight, that history is not only found in ancient artifacts but also in modern objects shaped by human error, industrial complexity, and chance, and that even the smallest coin can carry a story powerful enough to shake the collecting world. While not every 1997 penny is worth more than face value, and most are indeed common, the possibility that one extraordinary example exists waiting to be discovered is what keeps collectors searching rolls, checking pocket change, and studying mint errors late into the night. This ongoing hunt fuels the legend, because until every penny is accounted for, the door remains open for the discovery that changes everything, the coin that transforms skepticism into awe and proves once again that numismatics is not just about money, but about history, curiosity, and the thrill of uncovering the unexpected. As you finish watching this story, remember that the next time you hear the soft clink of a penny on a table or feel one in your hand, you may be holding more than a cent. You may be holding a question mark, a mystery, and just possibly a once-in-a-lifetime discovery that could rewrite records and redefine what a modern coin is truly worth. Next, 2001 Lincoln penny. Today, as we dive into one of the most astonishing and conversation-starting stories in the world of coin collecting, a story that has sparked endless debate, curiosity, and imagination among collectors and casual viewers alike. Because today we are exploring how a seemingly ordinary 2001 Lincoln penny has been rumored, discussed, and theorized to be worth an unbelievable $274 million due to a perfect storm of rare errors, unusual minting mistakes, historical timing, and collector psychology, that together create a narrative of extreme value, hidden treasure, and once-in-a-lifetime possibility. And as we begin, imagine the countless pennies that pass through hands every day, tossed into jars, dropped into pockets, or forgotten in drawers, because the heart of this story is the idea that one of those ordinary coins could secretly be extraordinary, And the 2001 Lincoln penny sits at the center of that fascination due to the unique era in which it was produced, the complex minting process behind it, and the extraordinary range of errors that collectors believe could elevate a single example into legendary status, starting with the fact that the year 2001 was a transitional and high-pressure period for the United States Mint, a time marked by massive production demands, aging equipment, and subtle process changes that opened the door for mistakes that might not have been caught before coins entered circulation. And among these potential mistakes, collectors often focus first on striking errors, because a penny that was struck off-center, struck multiple times, or struck with improper alignment between the obverse and reverse can display dramatic visual distortions that immediately set it apart from normal coins. And when such errors occur on a coin that otherwise appears pristine, sharply detailed, and uncirculated, the perceived value rises exponentially, especially when the error is extreme enough to be considered unique or nearly unique, which brings us to the idea that the $274 million valuation is not about an average 2001 penny, but about a hypothetical or rumored specimen that combines several ultra-rare characteristics into a single coin, beginning with the possibility of a wrong planchet error, where a 2001 Lincoln design could have been struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination or even a different metal composition, and because the early 2000s were a period when multiple coin types were being produced simultaneously. The chance of planchets being mixed, though incredibly rare, is not entirely impossible, and a penny struck on a foreign, experimental, or transitional planchet would instantly become one of the most important error coins ever discovered, especially if the metal composition were undocumented or unexpected, such as a leftover experimental alloy or an improperly prepared blank that should never have entered the production line. And layered on top of this possibility is the fascination with doubled dies, one of the most popular and valuable error types in numismatics, because a doubled die occurs when the die itself receives a misaligned impression during its creation, resulting in doubled design elements that appear consistently across all coins struck from that die. And in the case of a 2001 Lincoln penny, collectors imagine the ultimate doubled die, one so bold and dramatic that the date, lettering, and Lincoln's profile show unmistakable separation visible to the naked eye. And when such doubling is paired with sharp original luster and minimal wear, it creates a coin that collectors would compete fiercely to own, driving values into territory that feels almost unreal. Yet the story does not end there, because mint marks themselves can introduce another layer of intrigue, particularly when discussing missing, malformed, or misplaced mint marks. And although by 2001 mint marks were part of the master die rather than punched individually, anomalies could still occur through die damage, grease fills, or die deterioration, leading to faint or partially missing mint marks that spark debate over classification and rarity. And in extreme theoretical scenarios, a coin could display conflicting characteristics, such as evidence suggesting it was struck at one mint while bearing traits associated with another, a contradiction that would send experts into intense analysis and elevate the coin into legendary status. And then there are die breaks, cuds, and retained cuds, which are cracks or breaks in the die that cause raised areas of metal on the finished coin. And while minor die cracks are common, massive cuds that alter the shape of the coin's design are far rarer and far more dramatic. And a 2001 penny showing a huge retained cud across Lincoln's portrait or the date would immediately stand out as an extreme mint error, especially if the rest of the coin remained well struck and visually appealing, because collectors place enormous value on errors that are both obvious and aesthetically striking. And beyond physical errors, there is the concept of historical context and narrative value, which plays a surprisingly powerful role in determining price, because coins are not valued solely for their metal or rarity, but for the stories they tell. And a 2001 Lincoln penny tied to a documented production anomaly, a mint equipment failure, or an internal mint investigation would gain an aura of mystery and importance that transcends standard price guides, especially if official records were incomplete or ambiguous, allowing room for speculation, debate, and legend to grow. And this is where the idea of a $274 million valuation truly takes shape, not as a simple market price, but as a symbolic figure representing the maximum imaginable value of a perfect storm coin, one that combines a wrong planchet, an extreme double die, a dramatic die break, pristine condition, and a compelling backstory that captures the imagination of the collecting world. And condition itself cannot be overstated, because even the rarest error can lose much of its potential value if the coin is heavily worn, damaged, or improperly stored, while a flawless, uncirculated example with blazing original luster, full strike details, and no post-mint damage becomes a canvas on which every error is displayed with maximum clarity, making it irresistible to elite collectors, museums, and investors who compete not just with money, but with prestige and legacy. And speaking of competition, the psychology of high-end collecting is another crucial factor, because when two or more wealthy collectors desire the same unique object, traditional notions of value often collapse, replaced by emotional bidding, personal rivalry, and the desire to own something no one else can. And in such an environment, a coin that is genuinely one of a kind or believed to be so can reach numbers that seem absurd to outsiders, yet perfectly rational within the closed world of elite collecting. And this dynamic is amplified by media attention, viral stories, and online speculation, all of which can transform a single coin into a cultural phenomenon. And the 2001 Lincoln penny, despite being a modern issue, benefits from this effect because its apparent ordinariness makes the story more compelling, reinforcing the idea that hidden treasures still exist in plain sight, waiting to be discovered by someone curious enough to look closely. And this leads naturally to the discussion of possibilities, because the story encourages viewers to examine their own change, to learn about minting processes, and to appreciate the subtle details that distinguish a common coin from a rare one. And while the odds of finding a $274 million penny are astronomically small, the act of searching itself becomes rewarding, fostering education, patience, and a deeper connection to history and craftsmanship. And as we consider all these elements together, from striking errors and planchet anomalies to double dies, die breaks, condition, historical narrative, and collector psychology, we begin to see how the value of a coin is not a single fixed number, but a complex equation influenced by rarity, desirability, story, and imagination. And the 2001 Lincoln penny serves as a powerful symbol of that truth, reminding us that even in the modern age of mass production, imperfections can slip through, and when they do, they have the potential to become legends. And so whether you view the $274 million valuation as a literal price, a theoretical ceiling, or a storytelling device that captures the extreme end of numismatic possibility, the message remains the same, that knowledge transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary, and that sometimes the smallest objects carry the biggest stories. And as you leave this exploration, consider the pennies you encounter every day, because while most will remain just 1 cent, a few might hold mysteries that challenge everything we think we know about value, rarity, and the hidden potential of the everyday world. Last 2009 Lincoln penny. Today, as we dive into one of the most astonishing and imagination-stirring stories in modern coin collecting, a story that begins with a humble piece of pocket change and ends with a jaw-dropping valuation that sounds almost impossible, because today we are talking about the 2009 Lincoln penny that has captured attention around the world for reportedly costing as much as $275 million due to a rare convergence of errors, mistakes, historical circumstances, and extraordinary possibilities that transform an everyday cent into a legendary treasure. And as you settle in, keep in mind that this story is not just about metal and minting, but about how small anomalies can create massive value when history, rarity, and human fascination collide. The year 2009 was already a special moment in American numismatics because it marked the bicentennial of Abraham Lincoln's birth and the centennial of the Lincoln cent itself, prompting the United States Mint to release a unique series of 4 different reverse designs honoring stages of Lincoln's life, from his Kentucky birthplace to his professional years in Illinois. And this alone set the 2009 Lincoln penny apart from other years. Yet what truly elevates certain examples into the realm of staggering value is the presence of dramatic minting errors and production mistakes that occurred during a time of immense change at the Mint. During 2009, the Mint was still navigating the transition that had begun in 1982, when pennies shifted from predominantly copper compositions to copper-plated zinc cores, and this transitional complexity created fertile ground for unusual errors, including wrong planchets, off-metal strikes, and experimental blanks that were never intended for circulation, some of which may have slipped through quality control due to high production demands and the multiple reverse designs being struck simultaneously. One of the most compelling possibilities behind a $275 million valuation is the existence of a 2009 Lincoln penny struck on a solid copper planchet or even an experimental alloy, a mistake that would immediately place the coin among the rarest modern errors ever discovered, because by 2009, pennies were not supposed to be struck on solid copper at all, and the accidental use of an old or experimental blank would represent a profound breakdown in mint procedures. Collectors understand that wrong planchet errors are among the most valuable categories in numismatics, especially when they occur decades after a composition change, and if a 2009 penny were authenticated as being struck on a pre-1982 copper planchet or on a foreign or experimental metal, the rarity would be so extreme that value estimates could escalate into previously uncharted territory. Another critical factor that feeds into this astonishing valuation is the possibility of a dramatic double die error, particularly a double die obverse involving Lincoln's portrait, the date, or the word liberty, where the design appears clearly doubled due to misalignment during the die creation process. And while minor doubling is relatively common and often dismissed as machine doubling, true double dies with bold, rounded, and separated design elements are rare and highly sought after. And a major double die on a 2009 penny would be especially significant because of the year's historical importance and the multiple reverse designs that complicate die preparation. Beyond double dies, the 2009 Lincoln penny is also associated with the potential for mule errors, an exceptionally rare type of mistake in which an obverse and reverse from two different coin types are accidentally paired together. And while mules are exceedingly uncommon, the complexity of the 2009 production environment, with multiple reverse designs being struck concurrently, theoretically increases the risk of such an error occurring, and a confirmed mule involving a 2009 Lincoln obverse, paired with an unintended reverse, would instantly become one of the most famous error coins in existence. Striking errors also play a crucial role in the mythology of the $275 million penny, including off-center strikes that dramatically cut off parts of the design, broadstrikes where the coin expands beyond its normal diameter due to the absence of a retaining collar, and multiple strike errors where the coin is struck more than once in misaligned positions, creating chaotic and visually stunning patterns. And while these errors are not uncommon in isolation, an extreme example combined with other anomalies, such as an off-metal composition or a proof-like strike intended for a different purpose, could exponentially increase desirability and value. Another fascinating aspect lies in the potential involvement of proof dies or special satin finish dies, which were used in 2009 for collector versions of the Lincoln cent. And if a circulation strike were accidentally produced using a proof die or struck with an unusually high-quality finish on a circulation planchet, the resulting coin would blur the line between proof and business strike, creating a hybrid anomaly that collectors would fiercely compete to own. Condition also cannot be overlooked, because for a coin to approach a valuation as extreme as $275 million, it would need to be preserved in an almost unimaginable state of perfection, possibly graded at the highest known levels by professional grading services, with flawless surfaces, razor-sharp details, and exceptional eye appeal. And while errors are often associated with damage or weakness, the rarest and most valuable examples are those where the error occurred early in the striking process, allowing the coin to retain crisp detail despite the mistake. The psychology of the market also plays a powerful role in how such a valuation could be justified, because numismatics is not governed solely by metal content or face value but by rarity, demand, narrative, and the emotional resonance of a coin's story, and a 2009 Lincoln penny that embodies multiple layers of rarity, historical significance, and mystery becomes more than an object. It becomes a symbol of the unpredictable nature of manufacturing and the hidden treasures that might still be waiting in everyday places. Stories of extraordinary finds, such as rare pennies discovered in pocket change, coin rolls, or old jars, fuel public fascination and drive demand. And the idea that a cent from 2009 could be worth hundreds of millions of dollars captures the imagination in a way few collectibles can, inspiring people to look more closely at the coins they might otherwise ignore. The reported $275 million figure is often discussed not as a confirmed sale price but as a theoretical or aspirational valuation based on what the right buyer might be willing to pay for a unique, one-of-a-kind specimen that checks every box of desirability. And in the world of ultra-rare collectibles, prices are not always set by precedent but by possibility, especially when an item has no true comparables. Authentication and provenance would be absolutely critical in such a scenario, because a coin of this magnitude would need to be exhaustively studied, documented, and verified by multiple independent experts, with metallurgical analysis confirming composition, die studies establishing the nature of any double dies or mule pairings, and historical research tracing how such an error could plausibly have occurred within the mint's production process. And this rigorous validation would itself add to the coin's mystique and value. It is also worth considering the broader cultural and historical resonance of Abraham Lincoln as a figure, because Lincoln is not just another historical personality but one of the most revered figures in American history, and coins bearing his image carry a symbolic weight that amplifies interest and emotional attachment, particularly during a commemorative year like 2009, when the nation reflected on his life and legacy. When all of these elements are combined, the errors, the mistakes, the experimental possibilities, the historical timing, the condition, the narrative, and the psychological impact, it becomes easier to understand how a 2009 Lincoln penny could be discussed in the same breath as valuations that reach into the hundreds of millions, even if such figures remain speculative and reserved for the most extraordinary hypothetical examples. Ultimately, the story of the 2009 Lincoln penny valued at $275 million serves as a powerful reminder that value is not always obvious, that the smallest details can make the biggest difference, and that within the vast machinery of mass production, tiny moments of imperfection can give rise to objects of immense fascination and worth. And as collectors and enthusiasts continue to search through rolls, collections, and forgotten containers of change, the legend of this penny endures, inviting everyone to imagine the possibility that history, rarity, and chance might one day place unimaginable value into the palm of an ordinary hand.